It's strange how 5 years can feel both like forever and like a blink. Sometimes, when I look back, I can still feel the texture of that first night, the air thick with summer heat, laughter echoing down the campus courtyard, and the glow of fairy lights strung above us. I didn't know it then, but that was the night I met the man who would teach me what love feels like and what it costs when it disappears. His name was Liam Carter. He was leaning against the stone wall outside the art building, sketchbook balanced on his knee, earbuds in. I was late for my design critique and rushing like a tornado, but somehow he looked up right as I passed, and our eyes met. There was nothing dramatic about it, just a small pause. The kind of pause that feels like the universe took a tiny breath before whispering, "Remember this?" "Hey," he said, pulling out one earbud. "You dropped something." I turned, confused, then realized my ID card was on the ground. When I picked it up, he smiled, a slow, genuine smile that hit harder than I expected. "Amelia Reed," he read off the card. "Graphic design major. Senior." I raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" He flipped open his sketchbook like it was an introduction. Charcoal sketches, faces, city streets, emotion captured in lines. "Liam, architecture. Junior, professional procrastinator." I laughed, the kind of unguarded laugh that escapes before you can decide whether it's safe. That was how it began. A joke, a sketch, a glance that lasted half a heartbeat too long. Over the next few weeks, I kept running into him. Sometimes near the campus cafe, sometimes in the library where he'd claimed to study, but really spent more time distracting me. There was something magnetic about him, not just his confidence, but the way he seemed to see the world differently. Liam talked about buildings like they were alive. He'd trace his finger along a wall and say, "This one's tired. You can tell by the cracks. They're like wrinkles." Beautiful, though. I'd watch him, fascinated, wondering how someone could be so lighthearted yet so deep at the same time. We started dating not long after graduation. He got an internship at a sleek architecture firm in the city, and I landed my first real job as a junior designer at a marketing agency in Manhattan. Those early days were chaos. Small apartment, big dreams, endless ramen dinners. We didn't have much, but we had each other. We built a rhythm. Morning coffee runs, subway rides where he'd rest his head on my shoulder, late-night design marathons with him sketching beside me. He used to say, "You make the world look softer, Amelia. I see concrete, you see color." I used to think that was love, seeing yourself reflected in someone else's admiration. Our relationship grew the way city vines do, stubbornly, beautifully, through cracks and noise. We celebrated birthdays with cheap wine and handmade cards. We fought over dishes, made up in whispers. We had dreams, a small house someday, maybe a dog, definitely a studio with too many plants and too much sunlight. For 5 years, he was my constant. When I got promoted, he took me out to dinner with a grin that could light up half of New York. When his firm offered him a big project, we stayed up all night designing mock-ups together. When my mom got sick, he held me through the silence. We were partners, teammates, soulmates, or so I believed. But somewhere around year 4, something shifted. It wasn't loud or sudden. It was slow, quiet, like a song fading without you noticing when it ended. He started staying late at work. At first, I believed him. Architecture was demanding. Deadlines never slept. But soon, the excuses started overlapping. Client meeting, after-hours revisions, just tired, Then came the nights he'd turn his phone off. I'd wait by the window, watching headlights trail down our street, wondering if love was supposed to feel like waiting. When he was home, he was there physically but not really there. His laughter grew rarer. His touch felt absent-minded. I started to memorize the sound of silence between us, long, heavy, full of unspoken things. One night I asked him, "Are you happy?" He didn't answer right away. He looked at me, really looked, and for the first time, his eyes didn't feel like home. "I don't know," he said softly. That sentence broke something. It didn't shatter, it cracked quietly, but cracks have a way of spreading. A few weeks later, he began to disappear more often. I told myself it was just stress. I told myself love could survive distance, busyness, exhaustion. But love can't survive absence. There was one night I'll never forget, the last time I saw him before everything ended. We were sitting on the couch, half watching a movie, his phone buzzing on the table. I reached to check it, an instinct, and he grabbed it too quickly. "Work," he said, but his voice trembled just enough for me to feel the lie. I didn't confront him. I was too scared to lose what was already slipping away. If I had known that within a week he'd be gone completely, maybe I would have said something more. Instead, on a random Tuesday morning, I came home from work to find his side of the closet empty. No note, no text, nothing. He was just gone, like he never existed, like 5 years were a dream I had alone. For days I didn't cry. I just stood in that apartment surrounded by echoes, his coffee mug still on the counter, his jacket still on the chair. Then one night, the silence finally broke me. I collapsed on the kitchen floor, hugging his old hoodie, screaming into it until my throat burned. You can't explain what it feels like to be ghosted by someone who knew your soul. It's not just heartbreak, it's an erasure. I called him once, then twice, then 30 times. Each one went straight to voicemail. By the 10th, I stopped hoping he'd pick up. By the 20th, I started hating myself for trying. By the 30th, I realized the person I loved was gone, and maybe he'd been gone long before he left. It's been years since then, and even now, when I pass certain corners of the city, a cafe we loved, a park bench we carved our initials into, I still feel that quiet ache. But I've learned something time never fails to teach. Sometimes the closure you want never comes from them, it comes from you. And yet, I didn't know then that one day karma would bring Liam Carter back into my life. Not as the man who left me, but as the man who would finally teach me what it means to let go. Grief doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks in through the small things, the morning coffee you make for two, the empty side of the bed, the faint scent of someone who's no longer there. After Liam left, time stopped meaning anything. Days bled into nights, nights into long, sleepless hours where I'd scroll through old texts, reread them, searching for clues, searching for the moment it all started slipping away. There wasn't one. That's the cruel part about ghosting. There's no event, no goodbye, no reason. Just silence, a silence that grows teeth. I didn't tell anyone at first. It was too embarrassing to admit that the man I'd built my life with had simply vanished. Friends would ask, "How's Liam?" And I'd lie. "Busy with work," I'd say, forcing a smile that barely held. My best friend, Harper, saw through it. She showed up one night with Thai takeout, and that look, the one that says I'm not leaving until you talk. "You've lost weight," she said softly, "and don't tell me it's because of work." I tried to laugh. Failed. It's nothing. He's just been distant. Distant how? I hesitated. Saying it out loud would make it real. Distant like he's gone. Her chopsticks froze midair. Gone where? I looked at the blank wall where his photos used to be. I don't know. The days that followed were a blur of denial. I checked his social media obsessively, nothing. His number was disconnected. His firm said he'd resigned unexpectedly. It was like he'd erased himself from the world, or maybe just erased me from his. I went through all the stages they talk about: denial, anger, bargaining, except acceptance. That one never seemed to arrive. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, heart pounding, convinced I'd heard the door unlock. I'd check every time. Nothing. One night, I found myself sitting on the floor surrounded by old photos, us at the beach, our first apartment, our last anniversary dinner. In one picture, he had his arm around me, smiling. I studied his face like a detective, trying to see what I'd missed. Was he already planning to leave me then? Did he already know I'd never see him again? That thought broke me in a way words can't describe. A month passed, then 2, then 6. Life moved around me, but I was still frozen in the same chapter. Work became mechanical. I showed up, smiled at clients, pretended I was fine. My art turned dark. Black lines, fragmented shapes, empty spaces. My boss called it bold new direction. I called it therapy. Every corner of the city reminded me of him. The bridge where we first kissed. The diner where we'd order pancakes at midnight. The bookstore he loved, where his favorite author once signed his copy of The Fountainhead. I couldn't escape him, because I still carried him in my chest. Then came the day I saw his name. I was scrolling through an online architecture magazine when I saw it. Liam Carter, award-winning design for the Viridian Project, London. London. So he hadn't disappeared. He just left. And somehow, knowing that made it worse. Because it wasn't death, or tragedy, or accident. It was a choice. He chose to start over without me. I stared at the article for hours. His picture stared back, him in a suit, older, sharper, successful. The same eyes, but colder. My heart pounded, equal parts relief and rage. How could he move on so easily? Did he ever think of me? Did those 5 years mean nothing? That night I didn't sleep. I wrote him a letter, not to send, but to say everything I'd kept inside. You didn't just ghost me, Liam. You ghosted the version of yourself that loved me. You vanished like a coward, and maybe someday you'll realize that silence isn't mercy, it's cruelty in disguise. That letter changed something. It didn't heal me, but it shifted the pain from inside to paper. Harper found it on my desk weeks later. She didn't say much, just hugged me and said, "You can't heal if you keep bleeding for someone who won't even look back." She was right. That's when I started rebuilding myself, piece by piece. I went back to therapy. I started running again, every morning before sunrise, through the same streets that once haunted me. I deleted every photo, every text, every trace of him. It felt like amputation, necessary, painful, final. Time, it turns out, doesn't erase pain. It dulls it just enough that you can breathe again. By year 3, I was no longer defined by his absence. I had a new apartment, new friends, new peace. I started a small design studio, Reed & Company, focusing on emotional branding. Ironically, the first big client I got was a therapist's office that wanted a logo symbolizing healing. Life was poetic like that. Cruel. ironic but quietly kind. Sometimes I'd still think about him, not with longing, but with curiosity. Where was he now? Was he happy? Did he ever regret leaving? Then I'd remind myself, some questions aren't meant to be answered. Until one day, karma decided to answer them for me. It was a Thursday morning. I was in my studio, reviewing sketches for a new campaign, when my assistant walked in holding a coffee. "There's someone here asking for you," she said. "Who?" She hesitated. "He says his name is Liam Carter." The world went silent. For a moment, I thought I misheard. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe the name was just a cruel coincidence. But then I heard it. That voice I hadn't heard in years. Deeper, slower, but unmistakably his. "Hey, Amelia!" I turned, and there he was, standing in my studio doorway like a ghost that had suddenly decided to be human again. There are moments in life that split everything into before and after. Seeing Liam again was one of them. 5 years had passed, but it felt like no time at all, and yet an eternity. He stood there in my studio, sunlight spilling through the glass behind him, outlining the man who had once been my entire world. He looked different. Older, yes. His hair had flecks of gray near the temples, his face a little sharper, his posture less sure. There was something in his eyes, too. Not confidence, not charm, but a kind of exhaustion that didn't come from sleepless nights, but from life itself. "Hey," he said softly, as if that single word could bridge half a decade of silence. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. For a second, my brain refused to process that he was real, that he was here. Then the memories hit, all at once, like a flood breaking through a dam. His laughter, his touch, his betrayal. My throat tightened. "Liam!" He nodded, his voice small. "Yeah, it's me." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick with everything we didn't say. 5 years' worth of pain, questions, and ghosts. Finally I managed. "Why are you here?" He hesitated, glancing around my studio as if looking for something safe to focus on. His eyes landed on the framed logo sketches, the watercolor prints, the plants by the window. "You did it," he said softly. "You built your dream." "Don't deflect," I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "Why are you here, Liam?" He looked down, exhaling slowly. "I owe you an explanation." I laughed bitterly. 5 years later. You think I've been waiting around for that? "I know," he said quietly. "You shouldn't have to listen. But please, just give me 5 minutes." I should have told him to leave. I should have protected the peace I'd fought so hard to build. But curiosity, that cruel, stubborn thing, made me nod. 5 minutes, I said. He sat across from me at the small meeting table. For a second, I noticed his hands, the same hands that used to trace the lines of my jaw, now fidgeting with the edge of his sleeve. "When I left," he began, his voice trembling slightly, "I thought I was doing you a favor." I scoffed. "A favor?" He met my eyes. "You were on the edge of everything you'd worked for. Your promotion, your designs, your dream job. And I was falling apart. I didn't say anything, just stared." He swallowed. "The truth is, I lost my job 3 months before I left. The firm downsized. I thought I could handle it, but I didn't. I started drinking more. I was angry and insecure. Watching you succeed while I was losing everything, it broke something in me. I felt a strange twist in my chest. Pity, anger, disbelief. So your solution, I said coldly, was to vanish. His voice cracked. I didn't want you to see what I'd become. I thought if I left, you'd move on faster. Faster. I whispered. Liam, I thought you died. I filed missing reports. I called hospitals. I cried myself to sleep for months. And you thought you were sparing me? He shut his eyes, as if my words physically hit him. I know what I did was unforgivable. He continued, quieter now. I left for London because an old friend offered me a job. I told myself it was a chance to rebuild, to become someone worthy again. I kept waiting for the right time to reach out, and every time I didn't, it became harder. Shame turned into fear. Fear turned into silence. Silence. The word stung. That same silence that had drowned me for years. I leaned back, crossing my arms. So you just stay gone? He nodded, eyes glistening. I thought I'd start over. And for a while it worked. I got a new job, an apartment, even a relationship. But nothing lasted. Because no matter what I'd built, it felt hollow. Good, I said before I could stop myself. Maybe that's what karma feels like. He didn't argue. He just nodded, accepting it like a truth he'd already lived with. I came back because I heard about your studio, he said finally. A mutual friend showed me your work. I saw your name, and I realized I can't keep pretending the ghost of what I did doesn't exist. For a while, I just stared at him. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear this, to have closure, to understand. But now that I had it, all I felt was emptiness. You think this makes it better? I asked. No, he whispered. It doesn't. But I needed to say it anyway. You deserve to know the truth, even if it changes nothing. His honesty should have moved me, but it only made me ache. Because it was too late. You broke me, Liam, I said softly. But I rebuilt myself. Without you. He nodded, looking down. I can see that. You look stronger. Not thanks to you, I replied. He stood, ready to leave, but hesitated. I'm sorry, he said. Truly. I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed to tell you that walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. Something inside me trembled, not love, but the memory of it. I wanted to hate him, but all I could feel was the quiet sadness of knowing that once this man was my forever, and now he was just a stranger who used to know me. Goodbye, Liam, I said. He smiled faintly, a sad, tired smile. Goodbye, Amelia. And then he walked out again. But this time, it wasn't abandonment. It was closure. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights flickering through the window. For the first time, I didn't cry. Instead, I felt peaceful. Because I finally understood that closure doesn't always come from reconciliation. Sometimes, it comes from realizing you no longer need answers to heal. He had been my love, my loss, my lesson. And maybe that was enough. Weeks passed, and life went on. One evening, I received an envelope at my studio, no sender, just my name written in familiar handwriting. Inside was a single note. Thank you for hearing me out. I'm leaving again, this time for good. I've joined a charity project rebuilding homes in Morocco. I don't know where this path will lead, but I hope it leads to peace. You deserve all the light in the world, Amelia. Liam. I smiled faintly, folded the letter, placed it in a drawer. Then, I went back to work, because that's what life does. It moves forward. Dizzy epilogue, when karma knocked. A year later, my studio was featured in a major design magazine. I stood in front of a full room at a conference, speaking about emotional branding and human resilience. Someone asked me, during the Q&A, "What inspires your work the most?" I paused, and then I smiled. "Pain," I said, "because pain has a strange way of teaching us who we are. And sometimes, when the people who hurt us disappear, the best revenge is simply becoming everything they couldn't break." The audience applauded, but I wasn't thinking of them. I was thinking of him, not with bitterness, but gratitude. Because karma had knocked, not as punishment, but as truth. And the truth was simple. He lost me. I found myself. And that's the kind of ending that doesn't need revenge, only peace. If you're reading this, Amelia, it means I finally found the courage I should have had 5 years ago. By now, you probably know the truth, that I left not because I stopped loving you, but because I didn't know how to love myself anymore. Back then, I thought silence was mercy. I thought disappearing would spare you from the worst version of me. But I was wrong. Silence wasn't mercy. It was cowardice dressed as kindness. The night I left, I sat in the car outside our apartment for hours. I watched the light in our window flicker, saw your shadow moving around the kitchen, probably making tea like you always did when you couldn't sleep. I almost went back inside. Almost. But shame is a heavy chain. It convinces you you're doing the right thing when you're really just running from your own reflection. London was supposed to be a fresh start, and for a while it worked, at least on the surface. New city, new job, new version of Liam Carter. But no matter where I went, the ghost of you followed. In every skyline I saw your sketches. In every quiet night I heard your laugh. You haunted me, not as punishment, but as memory. You were the last good thing about the man I used to be. I met someone else for a while. She was kind, but I never let her close. Because love built on guilt is not love, it's penance. And I was still serving my sentence. It wasn't until I saw your name again, Amelia Reed, founder of Reed & Company, that I realized what true strength looked like. You didn't just survive what I did to you. You turned it into something beautiful. You built light from the ashes I left behind. That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending to be a better man while ignoring the woman who once believed I already was one. When I walked into your studio, I didn't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see if you were okay. And you were breathtakingly so. You looked at peace, confident, unreachable. I saw in your eyes that you no longer needed me, and strangely, that's what finally set me free. You once told me, love shouldn't hurt to keep. It took me years to understand what you meant. Now, I'm leaving again, but not the way I did before. This time I'm not running. I'm rebuilding. There's a project in Morocco, helping design sustainable homes for families who lost everything in an earthquake. I don't know if it will fix what's broken inside me, but it's a start. And maybe that's what redemption really is. Not grand gestures, just quiet change. If life ever lets our paths cross again, I hope it's in some small, ordinary moment. Maybe in a cafe, or an airport, or across a crowded street. And if it happens, I won't ask for another chance. I'll just smile and think, that was her. The girl who taught me what love costs, and what it means to lose it. Until then, thank you. For loving me when I didn't deserve it. For surviving me. And for proving that even when love dies, grace can live on. Wherever you are tonight, I hope the stars are gentle above you. Goodbye, Amelia. Always. Liam. You know, when someone you love disappears without a reason, it doesn't just break your heart, it breaks your sense of self. For a long time, I kept asking why. Why he left. why I wasn't enough. But what I've learned is, closure isn't something they give you. It's something you create when you stop waiting for their apology. People ghost not because you lack value, but because they can't face their own reflection. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't to make them regret it. It's to become someone they can never reach again. I used to think karma meant payback. But now I know. Karma is just truth finding its way home. He ghosted me for 5 years. And when he finally came back, I realized I no longer needed him to say sorry, because I had already forgiven myself for loving him longer than he deserved.